Hello, everybody. Laura Eisenhower here, and I have a wonderful guest with me. Her name is Angelica Christi, and I want to tell you a little bit about her and the amazing work that she is here on the planet to do. She is an alchemist, a spiritual coach, designer of sacred space, poet, instiller of wisdom, teacher, author, artist, and interior landscape designer, born in Northern California. She uses her divine given talents and the wisdom acquired through travel and on her inner journeys as a catalyst to serve humanity on the internal and physical levels of human existence. Really awesome. Hello, so glad that you've joined me today. How are you, Angelica?
I'm good. Thank you, Laura. It's wonderful to be here with you. Finally.
I know. We've been trying to do this for quite some time. And yeah, I mean, it's amazing because, it really brings in that whole sort of feng shui type thing. I have so many, questions for you. And, to create a sacred living space that, has these healing, properties, it's like, it's really where it's at to turn, our lifestyle, our physical lifestyle into a container for our spiritual journey instead of something that could actually block it. So I just want to start off with this particular question. First off, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
I started as a child going to catechism and knowing at 4 years old that what the nuns said and the priest said was not true, especially about Mary Magdalene, Yeshua, or Jesus. And so that began the journey of really questioning what I was being told. And there was a time I did a lot of healing as a child of animals and mostly insects and animals, excuse me, using aromatherapy from my garden. I mean, I didn't know what aromatherapy was at, 5 years old and 6 years old, but I was pulling things from the garden. And my sister said many, many years later, when I was in Sedona and had an amazing experience of seeing 4 past lives up on the mesas after I had done this deep journey work and also this essential oil ritual. And quietly, I was sitting at the mesas and then started seeing these tiny silver lines, like threads, and 4 past lifetimes. And I knew I could always prove my future ones when I do lucid dreaming, but I could never prove my past ones. But in this case, that's exactly what happened. And so it was really neat to get that affirmation because I had shut so much of that down because I was teased so much as a child when I healed animals and insects and butterflies and you name it. And so I just stopped to fit into the norm. And until the 3rd and 4th grade, I spoke up a lot to the monsignors and the nuns, and I got in trouble and I was kind of shamed and was sent home. So then again, I went into a sense of just being silent. And it wasn't until I was 16 and introduced to a spiritual teacher that I jumped in it and stopped caring so much what other people were thinking or saying. But yeah, and it was neat to then all those years later to get the validation that I wasn't crazy about seeing, past lives or even the future events, like I said, prove themselves. But the past ones, going to a conference and I met a woman just unexpectedly. She stopped and sat next to me. We started talking. And that night we were walking along the ocean in Hawaii. And she came out of the water and I said, to my husband, my former husband, I said, hey, this is Lisa, and I met her today and she's just wonderful. And we really clicked. And so he asked her, he said, well, where'd you come from? And she said, Philadelphia. And he said, when did you decide to come to this conference all the way in Hawaii? And she goes, 2 days ago. There was 3 of my friends are called Angel something readers and they do a radio show back east. But they called me and said, there's a woman you're supposed to meet in Hawaii, and you were nuns together in the 14th century France. Huh. And he goes, oh my God, that was her. Because I told him the story. The final one I remembered was that time in the lavender fields and being yelled to come in, and my friend trying to, buffer it between me and Mother Superior. And so it was really neat to then get these verifications of even that I could see myself as a healer in the temples as a priestess, and with the pharaoh, I could see an old man hunched over, grinding on an old stone table with this really rugged knapsack kind of garment. And then it went on. So it was really fascinating to know that. And I came out of that. I went, oh my God, I'm an aromatherapist. I'm a healer. And I told my older sister, because she asked me what I'd done when I got back. I thought, I'm not going to tell her. She was the one that teased me a lot. And so I just said, well, I don't know. I had this interesting experience. And I was, like I saw that I was an aromatherapist in past lives, but of course I can't prove that. And she said, well, yeah, when you were a kid, don't you remember you always made potions? And I went, wow, that's interesting, because I had totally erased that part of me. So, the journey on sacred space has come about knowing, even when I learned a design, interior design, and then of course, when you're doing interiors, you realize, because I'm extremely intuitive and I read energy, that everything has a vibration, and the importance of only having things in your life that contribute to a higher vibration, because it's hard enough in this world with everything that's bombarding us and hitting us. And so having a sacred space, and one's home should be that, doesn't matter how small it is. And then of course, as an interior designer, I ran to Italy and learned faux finishing, and I learned back east, I learned old stone finishes and Venetian plasters, because I also knew the walls were part of it, creating these subtle walls. And it was fascinating, because I remember meeting this nun one time, and I was saying, yeah, I don't know why I always feel like I can't paint. I won't go in and paint any one of these walls until I feel really aligned and that sacred energy is coming through me. It's kind of silly. And she goes, no, it's not. She said, you leave behind your essence. And so I think that's what people have to remember. No matter what you're doing, you are leaving behind your essence. And she told me a story of Findhorn Gardens when she was there. And every time she walked through this one room, she wanted to cry. And she was very, very energy sensitive also. She finally asked the woman who had been there forever and said, what happened in that room? And she said, oh, that's interesting that you asked that, because the man who painted the walls had lost his wife and cried every single day that he painted those walls. So I really began to be very careful about anything I put in anyone's homes. And I loved adding something that made them look well-traveled, just something unusual. But I also knew how many people just had these homes that you couldn't even see out in nature. It's like they had this house. To me, that's just a house. That's not a home. And even if you just have an apartment with somewhere you can put plants or a balcony or something and make that exquisite, the best you can. So I would open up everything, French doors, whatever, windows, just so you could, and then I learned landscape design, so I could create sacred spaces for people to even like walk down a hall. Instead of just a wall, I'd put floor to ceiling glass, and outside would be a gorgeous statue of Kuan Yin and a water feature or flowers or something, just so every time you were in your space, you are connected to the divine, even if you're not conscious of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Especially, yeah, exactly. In this world where we're bombarded with all sorts of energy distortions and dark technologies, we have to really amp up the frequency of the divine. And it's just so grounded, which is so important, because, very often humans are bouncing back and forth between higher and lower self. But when the higher can be anchored in the earth plane, in the physical plane, then that integration, has taken place. So you discovered this early on, that you were a little bit different than everybody around you, from what you've expressed to me before.
A lot different than my family. Let's put it that way.
Right. Tell us a little bit about. You mentioned a story before about at the age of 5, something about your grandmother. Having a fever.
Oh my God, where'd you see that?
I just pulled it out of thin air.
Interesting. So yeah, when it came up because my friend Oh my God, did I send you something I was
Yeah,
supposed to
I've been reading
send?
stuff you've sent me. So
Oh my God. Oh my God.
why
Laura
don't I
Wright.
give you, like, I don't want to have you answer any
No,
questions.
let me tell you that this is so amazing because when I was Ian, this technology that I really support, it's just magical, and it helps with EMFs and balancing these wave files that are magical, and deep sleep, and raising your kundalini and clearing the pineal gland. But I was talking to him this morning. He's just like this living Buddha. And I said, yeah, I've been going through all this detoxing, doing this whole cleansing things on so many levels. And I noticed that under my arm, these rashes are coming up. And is there one of these that I can turn it on to that will help with that, the detoxing program? So he shared with me exactly, which one to use. And then he also said, but let me share you this thing on taking these, a bath, but also raising your temperature to 105. And it kills off all these plastics that we have in our body that have been accumulated from the air, the soil, all the impurities, but also things like people using microwaves, how things actually, the structure changes and they're stuck in our body. So, and I said, well, that's really interesting, Ian, because when I was 5 years old, I had a fever of 105. And my mother was calling the doctor, and they were thinking she had to go to the hospital. And instead, there was this woman standing next to my bed. And I just thought of her in my delirious state. It's my grandma. And I always trusted my grandma because she just had all this wisdom. And she told me, put just stack every blanket on you, stay under it for 30 minutes. And then you can take it off and it'll break your fever. Well, I was 5. I just did whatever I thought that was my grandmother, but it was just a divine being, a guide showing itself as my grandmother, because my grandmother was 50 miles away and it wasn't her. And so I did that. And then I got up, and I got up too fast and my nose started bleeding. But when the doctor came, my temperature was 96 or 98.6. Wow. And he's like, what did you do? And I said, I just did what my grandmother told me to. And they said, well, your grandmother hasn't been here. And he said, well, you're supposed to be in ice, or you should have been in this. And I said, I think I'll listen to my grandma, So that was that. But that's funny that you got that email.
Yeah, it really kind of stood out at me as, I don't know, just kind of want to bring that in. I think people are just really freaking out with ascension symptoms, and we've been so indoctrinated into just, go to the doctor, take, something that's just going to suppress the symptoms and not allow us to learn and grow from it. And you just seem to just carry so much wisdom. And I just, love it. I mean, you'd be the kind of person that should, the world has a lot of questions for somebody like you, because it just really, you know what I mean? Like that level of how can we really be on an ascension path and gain our power back and really learn how to heal ourselves and create an environment for ourselves that actually is living medicine that surrounds us without having to think about it. So I'm just curious, because I could just imagine that a lot of people would want to be like, hey, I got a question for you. What are you doing like now? And I know you are writing a book, but like where's just kind of like your work? So if somebody wanted your services, I mean, are you somebody that can be a consultant and help them with their home? And you got this book out. What is your current sort of mission?
Well, it's interesting. My website is kind of what some people say, you know what, you can't do this. You can only pick one thing. And I've tried that my whole life, to be one of the things I am. And then this wonderful woman says, no, you're a Renaissance woman. Don't listen to them. But no, you have to pick one thing. And it's like, I healed myself through an experience when I was 28 years old, that I would be dead right now if I went through Western medicine. And it was because I realized they were killing me, and they told me I never have any more children. I had one daughter at the time, and that I was getting worse and worse. And it was like I had lupus disease, I had rheumatoid arthritis, you name it, I had it. And they kept giving me drugs, and then it would break down something else. And I finally said, in all the years of medical school, how much time was spent on the human body and nutrition. And he had to think about it. He says, I don't know, maybe a week. And I said, I'm out of here. He says, where are you going? I said, what my husband says is a witch doctor. And because I was going to go to a naturopathic doctor who actually a Chinese medicine woman and somebody in herbology. And I went from thinking I had to create a will for my then 5-year-old daughter, and who was I going to leave her to? And that was like a devastating thought because I didn't have anybody I would trust her with. And they had told me I would never have more children. So I said, well, after working with this woman who actually knew what was happening in my body naturally, I was healed and playing tennis in 6 weeks, where before I couldn't even walk downstairs anymore. I could barely move my fingers or my knees. And so then when my daughter, Christine, was born, and I walked through the doctor's office to the pediatrician, and he was in a building right next to it, and he saw me, and I said, hey, here's the child I would never have. And he had given me this look when I said the witch doctor, and like, oh, poor thing, you'll be dead before long. And so I said, here's the child I would never have. She was walking at 9.5 months, and he rushed out and he goes, well, what specialist did you go to? I said, I didn't. I went to the witch doctor, and marched off. So I've learned through difficult experiences in life. And I think I was kind of designed that way, that unless somebody's actually been through something themselves, how can they really teach it? Even like depression or anything like that. I mean, I went into huge depression when I lost 3 homes, land, everything, and I could not figure out how he could have gotten away with that. And I ended up with nothing, or very little. And it's like, how did that happen? And I went into states of depression that I didn't know you could go. And because of that, I had to find my way out. And then I had great compassion. And when people go, well, Robin Williams, this person, why didn't they reach out? We were there. No, when you're in that state, you can't reach out. You don't know how to reach out. So it's interesting that my whole life probably has been total trial and error. And I do know now why I lost those homes, because I wouldn't have spent as much time with my mother, who is now 90, on healing deep childhood issues, which were absolutely the most important part of my coming onto this planet and then being able to share it. Because, that's the problem. That's what I'm seeing anyway. I'm experiencing so many people that say, oh, they want to ascend, they want to awaken, and then you ask them to go to some depths of themselves. Oh, you know what? We're going to go wine tasting. Oh, okay. It's not my business. I'm not judging it. I'm just saying you don't want it bad enough, especially because wine is so acidic and it's also clouding up the pineal. I'm not saying, hey, I was just in Italy for 3 months. Believe me, I had a few glasses of wine, but it's not like I'm going wine tasting or I'm using a crutch. And it's it's really nice to see people like you and the type of people that really do want to do whatever it takes. So now I can be grateful that I lost all those homes, because if I had even one of those homes still, I would have never spent the amount of time with my mom and healed some of the deepest wounds I came in to learn. So, but you can find me just through AngelicaChristi.com, and I have a list of things that I do, and I've been trained in all kinds of coaching modalities that can take you to that place. So thanks for asking. That was a really long answer, and I'm really sorry.
I'm so glad. I mean, geez, I was hoping to hear that kind of thing. What I love is I really understand that life is the greatest teacher, and the adversities we go through is the ultimate education, because it pushes us to the edge, and it challenges us to, make some choices. Are we going to go to the Matrix program? Are we going to, go into just a more authentic aspect of self? Beyond aspect, like soul, divine spirit connection. And so you're a living testimony of how much that works. And it takes a lot of courage to be able to face these sort of scenarios and choose, the kind of path that you've chosen. So, that's one of the reasons I wanted to really bring you on. People are really needing that kind of encouragement right now. And I know you have a very interesting perspective on certain words. And I think there's been a lot of programming, even if a person's not religious, to feel lowly or lack of self-worth. And even though they might not use the word sin, that overlay or projection on the self can cause one to feel like a sinner. So tell us what your definition of sin is, because I know you've got a pretty profound one.
Well, actually, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right because I'm not good at that. So you'll have to forgive me. But I think the word was bisha, which was it's ancient Aramaic. And it was basically meant in the Lord's Prayer, not ripe. So it means like when you go to a tree and you pull off a piece of fruit that's not ripe yet, you don't have the nutrition and you don't have the flavor. If you wait too long, it falls and rots. It's not bad or good, it recycles into the earth, right? But if it's about right timing, and so you pick the fruit when it's perfectly ripe and it's the most nutritious and flavorful, right? And so sin is about, to me, right timing in our own life. When are we trying to force something? When are we allowing it to flow? When are we trusting a higher aspect of self, that when I lost all my homes, there was something deeper and more profound that needed to take place. So that constant surrender and stepping up when you need to step up and not being afraid to speak have your voice. And as we grow, I mean, people can say things bluntly at first. They'll go, I hate this, or I don't like this, or I don't agree. But as they grow, they realize they don't have to say that. They can say, wow, interesting perspective. Can you share your wisdom with me? And then we're in conversation. And what I see on social media, and it's the only reason I'm only on YouTube and Instagram, is because I'm tired of the pointing, the blaming, all the distractions, which are basically making us look away from what our true power is. All of those other humans like us are a powerful force. But as long as the very small percentage at the top keep us fighting, keep us saying it's black, white, Hispanic, whatever, then we get distracted. It's guns, it's this, it's none of that. It's if we empower each other by really hearing each other. It's not empowering, it's honoring another person by really hearing what they have to say and their perspective. And I did this whole thing, and I'm not interested. I don't care if I get backlash. I hated Trump. I thought he was the most despicable thing on the planet, and I had been always Democrat my whole life. Now, I'm no party, actually. I think they should abolish parties. I think it's ridiculous. And so anyway, I had to look at that every time I saw his face, I got in disgust inside. And I also went, he's like so unethical, and he's a this, and he's a cheat, and he, all of those words that, he's out of integrity. And so I had to go in and do what I was trained in with the work, which I was trained for 2 years with Byron Katie. I went in and said, okay, these are the things I think about him. Now let's turn it around. Where am I out of integrity? And I went, oh, because it's a magnification right now. Well, that's what people don't get. We are now magnifying into the world the deepest aspects of ourself that want desperately to be healed and be in union with all things. People talk about oneness. But they don't understand what oneness is. They don't at all. Yeah, oneness with these people that I like, but not with this. No, it's all of it. So when I went in, I'm out of integrity when I keep spending money like I did when I had lots of money. That's being out of integrity with myself. So it gets magnified another way. When am I dishonest? When I don't say, no, I disagree, and I just let it slide because I don't want to get in something, instead of just finding a kind way to say, well, that's okay, but I have a different perspective. So I went down the list of everything I thought about him. And even to he's an idiot, and looking at that and saying, when do I act like that? On some level, when I finished, out of the blue, all kinds of people came to me with documentation of what I could not see because I didn't believe it existed. And we can never see what we don't believe. And suddenly I could see behind the scenes of what is really happening. And it takes some time, and he has a crazy way of doing it. And guess what? It's obviously the way he's supposed to do it. But I can watch it and see how many people get so triggered, and they keep our minds so busy, and we're no longer going through the Sacred Heart and allowing the mind to be the servant. We are the mind that's just squashing the Sacred Heart. And we're so, like accusing and blaming and this and that. So it is a really fascinating time in our history. But again, I guess I just want to get back to the part where it's us. That is our magnification. And we can love each part. And that's why, my book was written, I think I told you I started this 18 years ago. And not because it took me 18 years to write, because I ignored what was being told to me. I actually had a publisher at the time that said, nobody's written this story. You need to do it. And I put it down. And a couple years ago, I started waking up at like 4:40 in the morning, and it was like in the dark, I would just start writing. And it was like something said, no, you've run out of time now. The planet has run out of time. And you have to finish this book. And I ended up turning it into a fiction because I thought it would be more palatable to most people. It's about empowerment too, taking our power back. It's not Catholic, it's not Jewish, it's not anything. It's Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, who they really were, what they were trying to share with us, how they were trying to help us ascend. And that it's the Vatican that has profited, the crown that profits off of us, keeping us slaves. So it's like, no more. I got to witness that growing up and being 8 years in a Catholic school and just being horrified what was taught to me. And, so it was my opportunity. Yeshua's come to me 3 times in dreams. It stood like that my grandmother next to my bed, so-called grandmother, and given me amazing stories about it. And one was even that I woke up and he said, take my hand, walk beside me. You no longer need to follow me. We are all brothers and sisters. We are all equals. And that was what he was trying to share. So there was just this really need to people to stop calling themselves sinner or thinking that it was their fault that somebody died on the cross. And it doesn't matter what religion, all of them are shaming, like we've caused something. And we have that foundation of not good enough, of unworthy, of being bad. It's really hard to shine in the world and do what we came to do.
Yeah.
So that was part of this message. What's happening right now on the planet, I was supposed to release that about 16 years ago and didn't. But now maybe it's divine timing. Maybe it's like, okay, nobody would even bother with this book if it wasn't right now. We are coming down to the wire of the split. If you want to keep on one dimension of warring, of destruction, death, GMO food, or it's going to be this split. And there's old prophecies in caves where they have shown these splits from thousands and thousands of years ago. And then the people on this split are prosperous and the sun's shining and, whatever. So it is that transition to the 5th and 6th vibrational field. And we get to choose, but we can't just spend our whole life on social media and trying to make a buck and thinking we're actually going to achieve something.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the choice has to have, follow through, consistency, dedication. And you're just such a amazing, just, light and guide and leader. And, somebody who's also gone into the dark and knows how to come out the other side, very, empowered. And it's so helpful in these times. This is like, it just feels like one of those books that it just came in the nick of time when, people are really looking for breakthroughs and to just really want to feel certain that they're secure on the path. And a lot of these internal blocks and belief systems about self, can really get in the way. It doesn't mean they're not on the path, but it certainly, diminishes one's way of life, and it become an energy drain, which, can really compromise a person.
Whenever there's a trigger in the world, person, place, thing, event, it is higher self that is saying, wake up, pay attention. Because this is unhealed within the self. And you can't even see a possible solution. you don't believe it's there, or if you don't believe that there's something to heal and you're just going to keep shoving it down. Stay in the positive vibe, do everything you can, crystal bowls, meditation, tuning forks, yoga, whatever it is, to your space, your sacred space. Do your deep inner work. When those gifts come up of looking like a negative in the world, and what part of you needs to be loved and healed. So
Yes, bringing love to all those places instead of shunning it, judging it, denying it because of trying to carry that facade of enlightenment. I mean, it just doesn't get us anywhere. And I mean, so that book, would we be able to find it on your website, right? And
yeah, you can go to my website under book and click, but it is called The Awakening Ones. And if you put that in Angelica Christi, then it probably would come up, but who knows with Amazon.
gosh, when you think of all the pages in that book and how every page is filled with just a nugget for people to, really, integrate. And the thing is, it's not about an outer belief system. It's really about bringing people inside and helping people get closer to who they are. And that's so important. And we don't see that enough. That permission to just go within, to know what we're made of, to know what our resources are, to be able to see, the different, traps out there, and also to, understand, what tools are available, what knowledge and wisdom is available to live the sort of lifestyle that you so masterfully know how to, create on a physical level. I mean, it's just incredible to just, share some space with you and introduce people to you that might not know you. For those that feel, incredibly broken, even, those that don't think they'll ever recover or heal. I mean, do you have the mindset that there isn't anything that we can't overcome? And
I mean, there is a soul plan too. So, but I remember one time I was walking with my son, and he's a very old, wise being. One day he looked at me, he goes, God, I always wondered why there's these, like you see these big potholes in the road, and you see them, but instead of walking around, you fall in them. And I never understood why you do that. And he said, I finally figured it out. You fall in so you can tell other people how to get out, because that's what it is. There is a solution for everything. And it's like, I remember my dad, when I used to own businesses, and I didn't know this. I didn't even know my dad felt this way about me, but he told my sister, who, when he passed away, I said, well, he always had a connection with you, but he really didn't connect to me. And she says, are you kidding? He couldn't believe that. You say, I'm going to open this business. And, he'd say, well, you have to go A, B, C, D, E, F to get to Z. And she said, she doesn't even understand that concept. It's like she sees A and she sees Z, and that's it. And it just happens. And that's truth, because I was shown in a dream once that this is the solution, and the problem always rest in the same place. In other words, there cannot be a problem without the solution already being there. We are these amazing divine beings, and these veils as they fall, and that's why opening that pineal gland is so important, and clearing the fluoride and all the toxins and the GMOs. It's just like so important that we do that, so we are in the clarity of what our divine sacred heart wants, and not the mind running the program.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just really important that, people just never lose sight of, what's available. And yeah, gosh, you were bringing up some, another question, but you might have even covered it to the point where it's not, really there. But, before we close, is there anything that we haven't talked about that's really important for you to share with us?
The only thing that I'm finding is really important is, there was a question my clients used to ask, and they said, how do we know if we should keep something or get rid of it? And I said, if you wouldn't buy it today, get rid of it, because energetically you are responsible for that thing. So that's the same with relationships right now. Don't stay around people that are dragging you down. That doesn't mean shunning them. That means learning what you needed to learn, and no longer having a trigger, because the trigger's the gift, whether it's family or an old friend or whatever, or somebody on the street. Heal that, and then keep attracting those people that will help you stay in that higher vibration. And music, sound is an amazing healing tool. And so that's something too with all this, what's coming in now energetically, and I can just feel it. They're talking about 5G, but let me tell you, stuff has been piling in and I can energetically feel it. So I'm constantly having to step up and using energy sources also, thoughts, catching my thoughts, doing my deep inner work. And we get to choose. It's not right or wrong. We just get to choose how we want to participate.
Yeah, and when we think about just the angelic realms and, you know, the Christ Sophia, the Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, and then these like lower entities and astral parasites that we hear about, it really is that part of us that is in self-defeat or fear or in like negative ego and everything you're talking about that needs to be cleared out in order for us to. And what I loved is when you went like this, because it's the 0 point, the solution and the problem. I mean, what are your thoughts about these lower beings compared to the, you know, and how humanity's been kind of stuck in these lower realms is kind of a final question.
You mentioned Mary Magdalene, so I'm going to just bring up
disclosure
a quick thing before I answer that. Is that she was the beloved of Yeshua. And he made that clear since I was a child. She was never a prostitute. She was a beloved. She had the wisdom to balance his masculine, feminine, and vice versa. And so that's part of what this story was originally going to be called Reunion, but it got changed. And so what's happening right now on the planet is the divine masculine and feminine are coming for just complete healing, because we've called this forth for quite some time now, using the words woke or awakening or spiritual this or whatever it is. And so now it's being called out and all those energies are coming to the surface. So the disclosure stuff, I'm a projector in human design. That means I see the future. I read energies. But I'm a 5-1. I'm also a leader and I'm also a heretic. So I'll tear things apart. I'll question them. But one of the things that I look at is I like to see all sides of it. So I watch all the disclosure stuff or the, you know, whatever it is. I like to see all sides of something. And it's just to be aware on the planet, because when you can read the pulse of the planet, you have to share information from a place of, okay, I don't just know this side, I need this side. And all of it is an opportunity. Like, let me say this. Okay, so if people are watching too much negative disclosure what's going on, that can throw their energetic balance off. Right. Even if they're reporting too much of that, trying to reveal it, it's like they've got to make sure, even more so, that they're doing more positive in their life, reinforcement, and not focusing on, because we all know what we focus on comes to be. It's like I would never wear one of those pink bands or ribbons or anything that supports that, because what's the first thing you think of when you think of pink? I'm asking you.
When I think of pink, I think of a rose.
Oh, well, that's good, because most people, when they see that symbol and the band on, they think of cancer.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So what happens is all we're doing is reinforcing cancer. It wasn't designed. It was to keep us sick for the pharmaceutical companies. So it's like, no. We didn't tag it wellness. They tagged it a negative, right? War on drugs. It became worse. You can't war on anything. And that's within yourself, right? Too. So again, all of this is a part of my divine play. How can I get mad at what's happening in the world? I mean, if we really do believe, and I guess a simpler analysis would be, think of the ocean and your wave comes up and peaks. You're not the entire ocean, but you're directly connected to that, and you fold back into source, and then you come back up as a bigger wave or a smaller wave or whatever. We're connected, but but we think of ourselves as individual. So there's nothing playing out that isn't an aspect of the self. So you can look at it and go, ooh, ouch, you know, or I have a problem with Ms. H. You know, I have to be careful about just sending that being love and support to get through what she has to heal. And I don't know what that is. I have no idea what a soul chooses. The soul is grand. And that's the problem. People don't understand that if all these aspects are aspects of of consciousness, and we're a part of that play, then there's a purpose for it. And to so love each aspect of it that it just can turn to light, to crystalline light sooner or later. But it's not affecting us anymore. So we don't attract those people in our life. We don't attract those events. And we are all being divinely directed where we should be. I mean, they're talking about seismic stuff that's going to happen too, and maybe the whole West Coast is gone. All I know is I will be where I need to be. And I think that's what we have to trust. And even if I leave the planet, I'm a greeter on the other side, so be it. Exactly. I'm not attached to this vehicle. This is just
to fear anything. We're here for soul development, and we have to trust that the experiences that we have are going to help us to become the fullness of our greater selves. And with our, just that restoration of the tree of life, our feet on, I don't know, gosh. Yeah. And I love it. And yeah, so, I mean, remind us again of your website and just show us your book one more time. I just highly recommend that, folks read this and check out our website and just look at, her services. So give us that info again.
It's Angelica, Angelica, and then Christi is Christ with an I at the end at .com.
Wonderful. And the book again, show us.
The Awakening Ones.
Yes.
And it's a journey to enlightenment.
Wonderful. And what I love about the journey to enlightenment from your wisdom is that it doesn't shame the process of us facing our shadow. And some of that can happen. I mean, sometimes one hears that, if one were to fear, even get angry, or it's just, that's bad. But I mean, in your mind, we have to face that part of ourselves in order to, would you agree?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. It's only say it could be a negative only if we keep getting these lessons and keep ignoring them.
Right. We keep losing and we stay stuck in the trenches. But like you said, with these adversities, losing your home, having these different things take place, you allow that to be a catalyst behind. I mean, that's the catalyst behind the alchemy, turning the lead into gold. And so you're a living example of, being a golden being that turned any lead that showed up, and did the work, and just really just a powerful leader and guide. So thank you so much for joining me, Angelica.
Thank you, everybody that joined us. It's just a privilege to be here.